Previously on Lately Fashionable. Today we are going to be sewing 3 different purple tops. I say today, really my goal is to get all 3 done in a week's time. So wish me luck, I guess. Next candidate is this men's dress shirt. It was my husband's and it got an ink stain in the pocket. He was no longer going to wear it and gave it to me, and I'm going to try to make a long sleeve shirt by combining this pattern with one of these. So I went ahead and traced the old pattern pieces of the vintage pattern, and then I lined up different fronts from the Dicky pattern and traced the ends of those so that I can have this master pattern and cut out different shirts from the same pattern. Now, I had originally planned for this video to come out 2 days from now. That's definitely not going to happen because I haven't even started picking apart the shirt that I'm going to make into the 3rd purple top. And I'm probably not going to until I get back from my vacation, so. Video schedules are an ever-shifting sand dune, I guess. It's actually a really good analogy. I finished the first 2 tops, so that's good. And I will pick this video up again when I finish the 3rd one. This project has grown in scope over time, and I have needed to adjust. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you come back for part 2. And now we're back to work on the 3rd purple top. Now, I did quite a bit of work on this top back in August, and I will show you all of the progress I did then, and then we'll jump back to right now where I'm finally going to finish it now in February. Okay, I have dismembered the lavender shirt. And as is now traditional, I am wearing the last purple top that I finished in order to cut out the next purple top. So let's get to it. Okay, so here's what I've come up with. First of all, I have a couple of problems with my fabric. As you may recall, there was an ink stain from the pocket. Most of the ink was on the pocket, but a little bit was on the actual shirt fabric. And I did try to get it out with rubbing alcohol, and it is just not budging. You can see it bled a little bit when I initially tried to get it out. This is when I was still trying to save the shirt for my husband, and quickly realized that was not going to happen. Also, I found bleach spots on mostly just this piece, but a little bit on the back too. So this is the main problem piece, and it's going to be interesting. Here is the back. It also has a couple of problems. One is a hole, which I can easily avoid because the back piece that I need is much narrower. But this also, like I said, has some bleach spots. I think I have it laid out so that I will not entirely avoid them, but they will be in the seam allowance, so I'm not worried about those. The other side, I believe, is fine. The other side of the front is also fine. I have not found any bleach spots. There's no pocket I have to worry about. So I haven't fully figured out how I'm going to get the front and still avoid the spots that I need to avoid. But I might not be able to, and I might do some embroidery about it. Next problem area, I wanted to make this a long sleeve blouse, but as you can see, I do not have enough room in the sleeves to do that. Even if they were long enough, there would still be this vent, which I guess would be fine, but I would rather avoid it if I can. And since I can, I am going to. I have decided that it's going to be a short sleeve blouse. I started searching for a short sleeve from a different pattern. I thought about going with this one, but it's going to be too wide. So I decided I'm just going to use the original pattern that I traced from my original vintage 1940s maternity pattern. And I'm just going to cut it off at the longest length I can get from the full width of the sleeve. And I might actually turn this upside down. I was thinking maybe I could get more width from the bottom there. Maybe. We'll see. But my plan is to make this cuff, which is supposed to go around the wrist, so I will make it longer so that it goes around, you know, my upper arm, just above my elbow, and then it's going to have this cute scalloped buttonhole, which will mimic the scalloped edge of this front edge from the Dicky pattern that I'm going to use. So it's going to be a very cute blouse. I'm going to use this as my base, lay this on top, cut out the scallops, add one more scallop to make it the length of the blouse that I want, and it's just going to be really cute. Do I have enough fabric to do this? Because I'm realizing that not only do I need a facing piece for the front scalloped edge, I am also going to need a collar and cuffs. And these cuffs are not going to be long enough to go around my upper arm. This collar is not going to be enough fabric to get the collars from. I can barely squeeze the collar pieces on the yokes, which is what I'm going to do. So, not sure where I'm going to get the fabric for the cuffs yet. We'll see. Okay, it's the next day and I was able to get all of my pieces cut out. I did end up using the yoke pieces for the collar, so I've got, you know, 2 yokes, 2 collars. The inside yoke had the tag attached, so that's going to be the inside collar. And the yoke already had the seam down the center, so now my collar's gonna have a seam, and that's fine. I cut the sleeves upside down, so this was near the cuff edge, and actually you can see the remains of the stitching of the top of this, you know, vent cover piece. So that's where that was. And I cut it that way so that I could get a wider lower edge, because I want to have this be a little bit of a puff into the cuff. And I am going to sew the cuff like this so that the button is on the top of the sleeve. It's not going to be under the seam because this is just a decorative detail. The back was no problem, got that fine. The fronts, I was able to get the facing for my scallops from the extra fabric from the back, and I did initially cut the left side front piece a little too narrow, so I'm going to piece back what's left of that back piece from cutting that scalloped facing. I'm just going to sew it with a really narrow seam and fold it out, and it's just going to give me a little bit extra, I think 1 inch at the most, but that will be covered by the buttonholes. So this is the side where the buttons are going in, and I think that will be okay. I was concerned because this is the first piece I cut out, and I was concerned that it was going to be too small and it wasn't going to fit. So when I cut out the right side front, I did add extra width to the side and also to the front so that I know I will have enough, and I can always take it in if I need to. And I do have enough scrap fabric left that if I need to, I can piece in another strip here on the left side, and I think it will be okay. I also added just a little bit to the sides of the back. Basically, I'm just really concerned that this is not going to fit because I haven't tested this pattern. I took elements from two different patterns, one that I have used and one that I haven't, but of course the one that I haven't used is just the dicky fronts. It's just the front to fill in a neckline, and it doesn't need to actually be a shirt. And the one that I have used is a maternity pattern, so I was like, oh, I don't need all this extra width at the front because I'm not pregnant. So I may have taken too much of that width out, and that's my concern. So we'll see how this works. Like I said, I'm adding a strip to the center front edge of the left front piece just to make sure that it's going to fit. Okay, I have sewn together the bulk of the blouse. It's going to fit. As you can see, I have my button plackets, the buttonholes. I have sewn the facing on. I need to trim those curves, turn it right side out, and then do the same with the collar. Attach the collar. The ink stain is going to be just outside where the collar covers, but that's fine because I'm going to do embroidery to cover it, and I will just follow the curve of the collar around the neckline and mirror it on the other side. That's the plan. It's going to look very cute and intentional and not at all like it's covering a large ink stain. I have one sleeve put together. I had initially thought that I was going to have the band up above the elbow, but then this part comes down and just covers it up. And actually it's more comfortable below the elbow, and I really like how that looks. And I like the little scallop on the cuff. I think that will be really cute. So I'm happy with that. This is actually going much faster than my previous two purple tops because I'm not doing a bunch of hand sewing. I am doing top stitching, which is good. It suits the style of the blouse. It suits the fabric. It's much easier, and I think I have enough thread to actually do that. Part of the reason I didn't do machine top stitching on the other two tops was I didn't have enough thread, or I was concerned I wouldn't have enough thread. At least that's the case on the halter. On the sleeveless top, I think I had plenty of thread, but I wasn't going to like the look of the machine top stitching, so on this, it's going to be perfectly fine. I will top stitch around these scallops too after they've been turned under. I did go ahead and add that strip of extra fabric to the left side front at the side because I was pretty sure it was not going to fit, and I wanted to just make sure it would. The right side doesn't have that, but since it's at the side seam, I don't think it's going to be really noticeable, so I'm just going to be okay with it. And I did mark on my pattern that I want to add 1 inch to this edge. And I should probably also mark or redraw some of these lines because they're not going to be accurate, but that's a future problem. It's working, it's gonna fit. I think it's gonna be really fun and pretty, so I'm excited. I've got to stop saying that things are going to take very little time. So I'm in Iowa now. I'm at my parents' house, and I did as much machine sewing as I needed to do on the blouse before I left so that I could do the embroidery on the trip. And this is where we're at now. I got the collar attached. The front button placket is done. Got the scallops. I really like them. And I have drawn the first flower that I plan to embroider, which is going to cover up the entirety of the ink stain. And then I think I'm going to make a little vine and add more flowers and maybe some buds and go all around and meet back up on the side and make it nice and symmetrical. And I have embroidery floss already. I think this is a really good color. And since I'm at my mom's house, I raided her stash of buttons and found these beautiful lavender ones. Perfect color and just enough for what I need. Now, of course, the construction of the blouse is not the part that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be this hand embroidery I'm doing. But I have a long drive back. My brother is driving with me. So on my non-driving shifts, I will be working on the embroidery. I'm gonna take Dramamine so I don't get sick in the car. But it's a 2-day drive, so I should get a good amount done, and I would have needed to pause working on this anyway for this trip, so it's not like it's going to take any longer than it would normally. I would have had to pause and come back to it when I got back. But I can work on it because I have hand embroidery, so it's all good. I didn't film any of my car embroidery, so this is when I'm back at home again. I did most of the embroidery off camera, as it is a nice travel project. You can see that I am doing a long and short stitch, and I did a satin stitch in the center of the flower. That is where we left off in August of last year. All I needed to do was attach the sleeves and do the buttons and buttonholes, but I hit a bit of a snag, which is the fact that I made the neckline too wide. So now, if the button placket closes properly, the buttonhole side, the scallops, are way too far over, and it looks really oddly asymmetrical, and I don't like it. And of course, I realized this was the case right after I had finished top stitching the scallops and finishing the neckline really nicely with this lovely bias binding. And I lost all motivation to continue working on it, because I had been kind of steamrolling towards the end, and I was really excited to be done and to be able to wear it, and then I hit a snag and I had to stop, and ended up putting this in the timeout corner for several months. But now I really want to finish it, and I can see a couple of different ways that I can fix this issue. My first thought was undoing all of my top stitching, taking off this scalloped facing and moving it in about an inch so that it will actually be in the right position and the collar won't look really out of proportion. And that was the only thing I could think of for quite a while, which I didn't want to do that, so I put it off. And then I thought, after recently doing this on a different blouse, I could put a pin tuck and bring this over without undoing all the scallops. But would it look funny to have just one pin tuck, because it wouldn't be mirrored on the other side? And also that wouldn't fix the issue of the fact that my scallops are not very nicely finished. I think I could have done a much better job on these. But like I said, I was steamrolling to the end, and not taking as much care as I probably should have. So I was chatting with my mom the other day, she's visiting me, and ran through both of my options. She thinks that the scallops could be improved merely by running a bone pointer along the inside of the seam before pressing it and top stitching, which I definitely should have done. So if I'm going to do that anyway, I might as well, because I'll have to open up the facing, undo all the top stitching, I might as well move the scallops over and make it fit properly the way I want it to. So I think I am going to do that. And then I just need to finish the second sleeve. The first one is already done up to the buttonhole and button point. And I will show how I did this cuff opening when I do the second one. So the first order of business, unfortunately, is going to be seam ripping. So one of the things that had been bothering me about the scallops was that they were not even. You can see this one is quite a bit wider than this one. So I cut myself a little card to standardize as best I could. I wanted to make them all the same exact length, but then that caused problems here and again here, so I just tried to keep the curve consistent at least. And I mean, I could bring it in a little bit more too, but I didn't want to lose the width of the facing. So this one's just a little longer. This one is pretty close to standard. And this one and also this one are shorter, but I'm okay with that because they're at the top and bottom, so it's gonna be fine. But now I have a stitching line to follow, so hopefully that will keep them consistent. So now I am going to reattach this facing along the scalloped edge, but I'm going to angle it in at the neckline. I'm going to leave it basically where it was down at the hem because I don't want to lose the extra width at the hem that I added. But I do not need it up at the neck, so it's basically going to come straight out of where the collar is attached, and that will be the first scallop. I think that will look much better, more intentional, and a better design overall. Note to self, drawing on the stitching line was definitely the way to go with the scallops. This gave me much more consistent results than trying to use the edge of my pressure foot to follow the seam allowance. I will definitely be using this method again in the future. I once again pinked the seam allowances of the scallops and carefully snipped into the points in between each one. And I used my mom's advice to run a point turner along the stitches on the inside to really round them out and smooth those edges before giving them a good press. And of course I once again top stitched along the edges and also along the straight inner edge of the facing. Okay, this is definitely much better. The scallops are more even and more smooth, and the gap at the front neck is smaller and just looks better, I think. Okay, so we're gonna go with that, and now it's time to do the sleeves. So like I said, the first sleeve is already finished, including the top stitching around the cuff. And as you can see, the closure is going to sit on the top of my arm. So this one I have pinned on. I've already gathered the sleeve to the cuff. I just need to stitch it. And I've left this gap here about 1 inch, which I will deal with after I have sewn the first seam all the way around. Okay, so now that I have removed my gathering stitches and pressed the fold of the seam really well, it is time to deal with this little gap. And the way I did it was just clipping in to the seam allowance, folding it over on the inside, and stitching it down by hand. And it's pretty invisible on the outside, so that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, it's been a few hours. I took a break and made dinner, ate dinner with my family, and now I'm ready to sew on one of the sleeves. It's pinned in there, and I started pinning the other one and then realized I had never sewn the gathering stitches along the top of the sleeve head, so I need to do that first. Okay, we have sleeves, huzzah! And I wanted to do flat felled seams around the arm's eye. That's not actually true. I want to have flat felled seams around the arm's eye. I did not want to do them, so instead I just overlocked the seam allowance because I am tired and I want this to be done. I can't really say that I'm tired of this project because I've only been working on it for a day after ignoring it for 5.5 months. But I am tired of not having it in my wardrobe. I want it on my body and in my life. So I'm not going to take the extra time to do the flat felled seams right now. I might do them later. I've left the seam allowance intact, so I can do it later if I want to. It's fine. But for now, I'm going to go inside and I'm going to hand sew the buttonholes while I watch a movie with my mom. Usually I'm watching TV or a movie with my husband, and he's gonna watch with us probably. But yeah, we're gonna hang out. My mom hasn't seen Cyrano yet, and my husband just got it for me on DVD, so we're gonna watch that. I'm excited. I have seen it. I love it. And I want to see it again. So, I'm gonna go hand sew the buttonholes because I think that will be nice and relaxing. Unlike trying to force the curve of a sleeve head into a flat felled seam. I've done it. I can do it. I did it on this blouse actually. I know it's possible. I just don't have the mental bandwidth or emotional capacity right now. So I am planning to wear this blouse tomorrow, so you will get to see it right now. Okay, it's done. Only took me 5.5 months, but I finished it and I'm very pleased. I really, really love it. I think it's very sweet and feminine and pretty. It's exactly what I was going for, and I'm so happy to finally have it in my wardrobe. And just in time for spring. I think it's a very spring-inspired look. And I do plan to add more embroidery around the top of the back, really, where I already have the line of embroidery. I will add more flowers, maybe some leaves, maybe some buds. We'll see. Time will tell. I did think about also embroidering a flower around every buttonhole down the scallops, but I think that would be too much. I think I'm going to leave it as it is. I really love the buttons. I love how they look. I think they're the perfect color, the perfect sheen. I love them. And I did the buttonholes by hand, so they look really nice. And that was partly because I wanted them to look really nice, partly because I was a little afraid of running out of thread, and I still had plenty of extra embroidery floss. But mostly because I was tired of being out in my sewing studio by myself and I wanted to be inside watching a movie with my mom. So I did get most of them done while we were watching the movie, and I finished the rest the next day, so now this is 2 days later. but it's done. I can check it off my list, finally. And I can move on to other things. If you enjoyed this video, as always, feel free to give me a like, and if you want to see more, definitely subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! It suits the Okay, it's been a few hours. I've had, stop. Let's take this shirt apart. I said shirt.